All right, and welcome back. It's a special episode of Hot Off the Presses. We're here with a whole brand new shared universe with Rise of the Elites, and we're here with all the different authors. We're going to be talking about the different books that are going to be rolling out. I'm going to start by jumping over to Jessica, and I'm going to let you introduce your writers.
All right. Well, thank you again for having us. I had a ball creating this world inside my mind, and I'm just so happy that the authors have agreed to be a part of this process. It's new and it's exciting. I'll start introducing myself, and then we can go around. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jessica Cage. I am a USA Today bestselling author of fantasy books that feature strong characters of color. And like I said, this is my brand new mind baby, and I hope to be able to do this again soon. So fingers crossed it's a success. But if you want to go around and you guys, I guess we can start with Lacey, because she's like right next to me. So
cool. I am Lacey. I write dark paranormal fiction. I also do some young adult. I enjoy, I'm a nerd through and through. I love Comic Cons. I'm a Trekkie. So you'll find me at places like that, well, when they start up again. But I love writing about just how identity unlocks power. So in every story I have, once people embrace who they are, just that part of them that they've been denying, that's when their power sort of kicks in. So I just have fun like creating stuff like that, because I actually did a young adult piece called Homegoing, where the main character, he's a 4-year-old necromancer, and he wakes his grandma up at her homegoing. Like, she is the customer in the casket, and he wakes her up, and it gets interesting from there. But it's just nice playing with those what ifs. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Kish Knight is next.
Hey, I'm Kish Knight, and I like to say I'm a young adult / new adult author of urban fantasy and a little hint of paranormal romance. I like to write novels that are, I guess, non-typical. I always have non-typical characters that, they don't follow the typical mold. The story doesn't go in the typical order, because I'm different. I'm weird. I like things like that. And for example, one of my earliest paranormal books / urban fantasy books was Return to Fire, where I had a young lady, Sion was the main character, and she's coming back from the dead to find out that she's got to figure out who murdered her, plus getting involved with a whole new world of characters and beings. So I like storylines like that you can't really figure out who did it, who's it, and that's me. I'm just different.
I like that. Okay, next is Mikel Wilson.
Hey, I'm Mikel Wilson. I'm a USA Today bestseller. I write in science fiction and fantasy, as well as Christian fiction. I'm a musician. I like to sing. I like to work on cars. I'm a giant geek, so I love X-Men comic books. I'm like Lacey. I love Comic Con, and instead of being a Trekkie, I'm a Star Wars nerd, like all about Star Wars. And I build cars, so I mean, that's all I do. Like, I guess you can say I'm very eclectic when it comes to that. My book, I love to write about Christian fiction, like I just said. Shattered but Not Easily Broken was one of my bestsellers. And science fiction, I have a hybrid series. A Light Beyond the Darkness is out right now, and I've got a couple more that are about to come out. So that's just a little bit about me.
All right, thank you. Delizhia Jenkins.
That's my girl.
All right. All right, so I'm Delizhia. I write paranormal romance and urban fantasy for both adults and young adults. I think what separates me from other authors is the fact that I like stories that are prophecy driven. I do a lot of research and reading on like things that are considered like esoteric. I'll pull pieces from the Bible. I will dig deep into history to find characters and kind of introduce them to my world. So those are the kind of stories that I prefer to write. I love legends. I love myths. I'm one of those people that would like to one day travel and kind of be like a myth hunter, that sort of thing. I do write characters of color. I really love writing stories about especially single mothers, because I don't find those stories in a lot of urban fantasy. A lot of the characters are usually pretty young. So I wanted to assist in diversifying urban fantasy and paranormal romance with, more seasoned characters who are experiencing supernatural things. So that's pretty much what I do in my spare time. I would like to go back to traveling. I was living my best life before, and then, everything changed. So that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Last but not least, Jennifer Laslie.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Laslie. I'm also a USA Today bestselling author. I love writing paranormal romance, and I do write some young adult. I'm kind of all over the gambit when it comes to different genres in paranormal romance. I like to mix things with like dystopian or, shifters and witches and things like that. I am a crafty person as well, so not just a creator of worlds and books. I love to do things with like clay or just anything I can think of, I'll create.
Awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to this. So Jessica, let's actually start. How did you come up with this world? Tell us a little bit about this world, that everybody else is working in.
So I came up with the world, it was like November of 2019, I want to say. I just kept having like images in my mind of this world that was controlled by supernatural beings, where humans were never a part of the spectrum, right? And they had these different fashions, and each sector had their own leader. And as it was coming together, and I was piecing it like, oh, this would be good if, each one had its ruler, and the rulers are being challenged in some way. And I was like, well, what if I did this, but like use this as a way to help other people or other authors kind of cross promote their work? Because I have seen shared worlds done, but I was like, I want to do my own one, like where I control the rules of it. Because I think for me, I write in other people's worlds, and I'm like, I want to change things. I want to tweak it. So I was like, well, this is an opportunity for me to do that, but make it more of a collaborative build as far as some of the magic and rules. Like we had discussions about some of the things that were happening within the world. So while it was based off of my idea, each author had their input as to, what can we add to the world, or, we had real discussions about some of the rules that I put in place, and like, does this not work for you guys? Because I know how difficult it is to like step inside someone else's, structure and say, okay, now create a story. But it really came to me when I didn't have any specific particular character in mind or anything. It was just the world itself, and then the overall field of what it was going to be. And then I think I actually reached out to Delizhia first when I was like considering making this something that I would share with people. Like, okay, what do you think? Like, I don't know how I've never done anything like this before. But it actually turned out to be this really fun collaborative effort, and I'm super excited for how it turned out.
Well, let's find out a little bit more about the books that you guys have got coming out. So Em, let's actually start with yours. What's your story about?
Trials of the Black Throne. That one's about a girl who has grown up in just the Chicago South Side. She doesn't know that she's half orc, so she has no idea that this whole other world exists. And as the story continues, you find out that there are other people, our villains, who have sort of kept her presence masked. So when the elites fell, she knows nothing about it. And then they kept, a lot of her, her presence, masked. So she basically has a couple days just to just basically get to where she needs to be to claim, her status, and also come to grips with, wow, there's another world. Wow, I'm half orc. Okay, what is this? So it's a lot for her to process, on top of she has these responsibilities and these new abilities as well. So I think it's pretty cool because it does mesh with a little bit of her life on the other side and her new life to Penumbra. So it was interesting first to have an orc to be like a hero, and that because they're known to be just really aggressive in the fictional world. They're just like vicious and war, just they're war hungry, like they like war. And her goal is her drive, her goal is to bring peace between her world and the human world. And it was interesting just building the story in and of itself. Like, what would that be like? Okay, you wake up one morning and your whole, like, there's always like change is always a surprise and it's an adjustment. But you wake up and like, okay, I am heir to a throne. Oh, I am, all this stuff has changed. But in your regular world, it's a little twist on the Harry Potter. Like your regular world, you're invisible. Nobody really knows much about you. But then in this other world, you're royalty. And to walk into that, to get over your hangups, like self-esteem issues, you got all these challenges as a person, and then you have to adapt to this new environment. So that's the gist of what my story is without, giving too much away, but that's basically her journey.
So Kish, what about yours?
Okay, so my book is the last book, the sixth book. It's Fellowship of the Last Fallen, and my characters are angels. So the main character her name is Dix, and she is one of the fallen. So her parents belong to a group of angels that they were cast out from heaven. They left, whatever happened back in the day that caused them to leave, which she's actually going to find out a little about. But whatever happened caused them to leave. And now they're all living in the human world. But for her, she still believes in the old ways of the angels, the old world and everything. She's the only fallen that still believes. And for her, she knows that she's basically a stain. She's one of the fallen, but she's completely shocked to find out that she's been chosen as the next elite. So she really doesn't know what she's walking into, because it's the first time that she's being basically allowed to enter back into the celestial world. And she thinks it's all roses, like, wow, I'm fallen, but I guess I'm forgiven. I've been chosen. But she really finds out that she's walking into a huge mess. Plus, there's actually a little bit of controversy about her rising, about her being chosen elite, which she comes to find out. And she's not going to be happy about it. I can't, say it, it's a spoiler. But the other thing that happens for her is that, every elite in, from her world, they have cabinet members, which is, their support staff. But for her, before she can, be thrown, her cabinet quit. They don't accept her. They just leave. So for her, she's now the new elite. She's got to learn a bunch of stuff. She doesn't have any support. The cabinet members have left her. And she also finds out that we've got big problems in our world that they need her to fix in a short amount of time. So she finds out that the higher level of angels, higher than herself, they're almost like living gods. They're unhappy with the way their world has been running. And so they've released flames that can't be put out. They were created with an angelic spell. And so it's her job now to figure out how to stop this and save their world. So she's really got a lot on her plate. And she just really didn't know what she was walking into. And there are so many little secrets floating around that she's going to have to work around, figure out, so that she can actually save this thing and, win the day, basically. So that's Fellowship of the Last Fallen.
What about you, Michael?
Thanks.
Hey, how are you doing? Well, my book, Ascension of the Blood Throne, starts out with two teenage girls on a subway. They're going to get some pizza, and there is a prince from Penumbra who is actually there looking for a bride. And he bites both of the girls, and turns out one of the girls is a little more stronger than he had hoped that she would be. After he has chosen his bride, her best friend actually turns out that there's a lot of secrets about her that come to light that he or she didn't know about. So there's a lot of things going on in that story as far as vampires, and there are also vampire hunters that are involved. And so it gets really twisted, and there's a lot of different aspects of the story that are really going to, make you can't wait to read the next page.
So mine is House of the Blue Flame. It's the second book that's due for release. And so my story takes place in the city of Draconia. My characters are dragon shifters. And in that world, it's divided by houses. So you have the blue flame dragons, who are considered the strongest and the most powerful. They possess the strongest magic. And then you have white dragons, ice dragons, sea dragons, red dragons, also known as the Vulcans, and you have shadow dragons. So each house is it's like a hierarchy. So with the shadow dragons are at the bottom of the barrel, and the shadow dragons have been at war, or there's always been tension between themselves and the Vulcan family. So my character, Adaya, is a blue flame, and she actually, the night that her grandfather, who was one of the elites, fell, she had a vision from him where he chose her to take his place. And part of her responsibility is to unite the houses, basically. And so in the middle of her trying to figure out a way to bring the houses together, because they're divided. Blue flames tend to stick with blue flames, ice dragons tend to stick with their own, etc. There is a villain that's in the midst that had started assassinating the elders of the houses, and no one is aware of who's doing this. So she has to figure out who's killing the elders, because now this is triggering the other houses to go to war. So that's pretty much the story. On top of her identifying who the culprit is, and the character, his name is Black, and there's a twist that I put in with him, with his backstory and how he ties in with the dragon shifters. So basically that's pretty much the story. Adaya not only has to unite each of the houses of each of the clans, bring all of the clans together, but she also has to find out who's the one behind the murders. And then on top of this, it's kind of like a coming of age, because she's finds herself doubting her own ability to do this. So it'll be very interesting to watch her growth and build that confidence and for her to realize that she is special and she does deserve the position as a lead. So that's pretty much my story as well.
Okay, and Jennifer, what about yours?
Mine is the third book that's going to be released. It's for the Shadow Dynasty, and my main character is Mei Ching. She was actually a council member for Cyrus, who was the elite that fell. And with the shifters, they receive a mark on their body that shows that they're the next elite. And she's scared when she discovers this mark because she didn't want the position. The wolves had ruled for so long, and with a cruel hand though, and she's a black jaguar shifter. So she's reluctant to take the position, but she knows that there needs to be some kind of change. On top of her being the next elite, the High Spirit has also tasked her with finding the cure for a virus that's been ravaging through the shifters. And her mom is actually...
Amazon is here. Can you go keep us
Sorry. Sorry.
And,
Sorry.
So she's got to deal with two tasks, basically. Live for the next 30 days and survive all of the trials that she has to go through. Find this cure that the High Spirit told her was out there. And then on top of that, she finds out that the guy that's been helping her is actually her one true mate. So she's got a lot going on.
And Jessica, what about your contribution for the series?
So mine is the first to release. No pressure, no pressure. So it's called Reign of the White Phoenix, and it is about my main character, who is a an anomaly in her species. So for our world, there's only two phoenix. You have the red flames and the blue flames. The blue flames are a lot more unique. They come about very rarely, so they have become like the upper hand of their world, right? So they're treated like the kings and queens of the Phoenix people. And then the red flames are just kind of like your everyday worker people. They're okay. But then over the last century or so, there has become an issue where we're having people born without flames. So they mature and they never get their flame. And they have become the flameless, which they're starting to be treated like the slaves almost of her world. And now my character, she Elsfair is her name. She was actually raised away from Penumbra in on Earth inside of a sanctum, a sanctuary that they could protect her because she was actually born different from every other Phoenix that has ever existed. She was born with white flames. So, and then typically a new Phoenix has to mature before they gain their wings and they have access to their fire. Elsfair is different in that way. So they had to protect her because they was like, okay, she's special. And if anyone sees her, it's gonna be mayhem, right? So they take her away from Penumbra to raise her and never explain any of this to her, which is like, what the heck? She knows about it. She knows about Penumbra. She learns the history of her people, but they don't exactly share the history of herself. Okay, so she's kind of walking into this blindfolded. They didn't expect her to be chosen as the next elite so soon. They wanted her to mature first, and then they would kind of introduce her. That was the plan. But the High Spirit was like, no, we're going to do this now, when she completely doesn't know what the heck's going on. So when she matures, she actually escapes her sanctuary to go into Penumbra. And through her journey of trying to just live her life, because she's like, I've been trying to live my life, forever, but I've been in this little hole that you guys put me in. And now you're telling me that I don't even get to get out of this. I have to go be the leader of these people I've never met. So she actually escapes her guardians and goes on her own little journey into Penumbra, even though she doesn't know what she's doing over there. But then she finds out about the flameless, and she finds out that there are actually now what they call the dark flames, which are the Phoenix people who have accepted darkness into their hearts because they just are so against the way things are going. But this is actually threatening the balance of power in Penumbra as a whole. So now it's her responsibility to fix all of this, or Penumbra itself would be at risk.
So there's a lot to unpack in this world. I think everybody can get that idea already. It's a really rich and really packed world.
Yep.
So looking forward to this myself.
Yeah.
So as we look at kind of this big world, what was it like for you? I mean, because I don't know yet, how much do your stories intertwine? So with each of the books, is there any interconnecting story that crosses all of them? Because it sounds like you've got everybody's kind of rising up. So this is the first book for each one of these characters.
Yeah, it is. So the basis is you'll see the entry to the world where our current elites are meeting at their, I don't know, what's the word I'm thinking of? They're all coming to commune to shift power. So every decade, the power shifts from light to dark. And that's the controlling power of Penumbra for that period. We have them all coming together to shift the power in the other way. And the High Spirit, who is the entity that controls Penumbra, it's her magic that protects it. She is the one who chooses the elites. She decides, I need new elites, because the balance, as you can hear from the stories, the balance is falling apart in all of these different areas, right? So the High Spirit comes in and she's like, we need to make some change, okay? And typically when an elite falls, is one, maybe two elites at a time. They've never seen so many elites fall at one time. So that's the connecting point, is that all of these elites have fallen, which leaves Penumbra kind of hanging in the balance while we find out who is going to be the next person to control their areas and not destroy the balance of this place. Because the whole thing is like, we have to keep the balance, we have to keep us protected, because we don't want humans being able to come over here with all their nonsense.
Yep.
I know that you guys can speak on this. I know that we've kind of stayed away from crossing our stories too much. But say if I want to use a shifter in my story, I have to go to Jennifer because she's like queen of the shifters for this world. And I have to talk to her about the rules for her shifters and making sure that I don't mess anything up with her storyline. I know I have like a big battle scene going on and at one point in my book, and I'm like, guys, if you're in the woods on this day, you might see some flames, you know what I mean? So,
There were flames.
there's a big fire fight going on.
Well, also too, if I could go ahead and add, there's we've got a forest in there, and I think like everyone created kind of weird characters or maybe monsters that live in this forest. So so if you wander into the forest, regardless of what race or book you're in, you can run into one of these characters. Like, yeah, Jen created a lot of them, so I know I've used some of those creatures in my book. So my girl definitely runs into some of these creatures that you're gonna see like in the shifter world, you know. So
yeah, because I know in mine, a couple of creatures, people are gonna run into a couple of creatures from other stories. And it's like I tried to keep mine sort of with a, I guess you could say tunnel vision, in the sense where it's just, you know, the orcs are all about the orcs, you know, they're self-contained, self-consumed. But then there's like, what is it, the host of trades, where that's where things can get a little tricky. And so that's where I draw in like some of the creatures from the other stories, you know, because it's like, you know, we have like a creature, it's adorable, but it's man-eating. So they sort of get loose from the host of trades. So that's where some of my characters are gonna run into them. And also with the whole idea of magic, orcs aren't magic, but there is one particular orc who's sort of shady, and she's learned how to access magic, you know, but she's done a lot of that through the host of trades. So, you know, that's where everything sort of starts for my story. It blends in through there because, you know, it's black market. Whatever you want, you can get it. So, you know, that's that point for my stories.
Yeah, so there are those common places like the host of trades or the darkest forest, and inside of each book you'll be able to see the map of Penumbra, so you can kind of figure out where you are in the map and see, oh, okay, I was here last time and I saw that. So, and Jennifer was amazing putting that map together for us. With all of us, like, this needs to be in my territory, can you move this line, can you put this type of tree? Like, thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. I had fun making it.
More trees, Jennifer, more trees.
Right. Mountain clouds.
I need water.
So Kish, let's start with yours. Because one of the things I am a huge fan of myth and legend and mythology and taking and twisting it and doing all that kind of stuff. How'd you pick where you were starting from with your angels?
You know what? I always like just like how you say you always like myth and mythology, I always like the idea of angels falling from heaven, having offspring on earth, which, you know, we call them Nephilim, and I've got a few of those in my story. I mean, that's my thing. I'm always fascinated by it. And when Jessica approached me with the opportunity to write in this world, I really just felt like this is a way for me to explore that part of it. Like our area, like my book, my collective area, it's called Fifth Heaven. And that's actually, you know, a real term that is used when they talk about the fall. That's like where supposedly, you know, angels fell from. And I'm not going to go into it, but I explore why they fell. And it's not going to be what anyone would have anticipated or thought. But I really wanted to get into that, like what causes supposedly good creatures or beings that have everything, what causes them to go in the other direction? And it might just be simple things. It might be human driven emotions that causes this. And I just really wanted to kind of unpack that. And that's why I decided to start there. And then with choosing someone who was a member of the Fallen, as for my character Dix, she didn't choose to fall, but her parents fell. And the way it goes in my story, well, if your parents fall, then you fall too. You have to go as well. So for her, she still believes in, all of the beliefs, but she is branded as fallen and she's got this stigma attached. So, when given the chance to come back, she's apprehensive. She kind of doesn't want it because she believes in, keeping the old ways and having the respect. But, given the chance, she comes back like, hey, I can do good. But, nothing, even in politics, in the politics that we're in today, nothing works like that. Even when you're giving a chance, you still prove yourself every step of the way. And sometimes you don't get the support, but you don't get to say, no, I can't do it. You have to keep going forward. And then you find out that there is so much more under the surface that you didn't even know. And you never could have even dreamed about. So, that's where I came from, basically.
Okay. So Delizhia, what about you? How'd you pick working with the characters you created?
I have a deep fascination with dragons, and I always wanted the opportunity to write a dragon fantasy type story. I tried to do it on my own one time, and I just didn't have the inspiration to do it. It's still sitting half complete in my computer. And when Jessica approached me with the idea, I was just like, this is the perfect time to flex my dragon writing pen. So I don't know. I just really love dragons. And the whole concept of when I started figuring out, okay, what kind of dragons? The blue flame, that's my favorite color, blue. It did the whole, when I created that concept, I equated blue flame with like a type of creation magic. And from there, I just kind of came to life.
Well, and dragons you find dragons or something close to that in pretty much every culture. It's one of the universals. So I always love to see how people take that and turn it for their own ideas, how you create your own incarnation of it. So I find an interesting crossover with the idea of the dragons and the color of the dragons and the flames, the flame, and a little bit of a correlation to like the idea of the djinn, the idea of smokeless flame and some of those sorts of things. So I really like the idea of playing with that idea of the dragon energy and whatnot as a universal and creating a constant behind it.
Thank you. And if anyone that knows me, I have like a lot of dragon themed jewelry. I have one around my neck. It's labradorite. This is the biggest one that I have. Tends to remind people of like a dragon's egg. At any given time, you'll see some sort of dragon themed necklace hanging from my neck. Not today. I threw this on at the last minute, but I have dragon bracelets. I have dragon themed rings.
Yeah, she's always posting her dragon set. Like I have a bunch of dragon figurines, and I'm like, oh. And then Delizhia will post her collection. I'm like, I have nothing.
So what about you, Michael?
Well, I love vampires. My nickname is Hybrid. My nickname has been Hybrid since before junior high school. My vampire story is like a journey. So they're trying to do self-discovery. When the prince finds out what he finds out, so I can't really tell that part yet, but the prince is going to find out something. He is actually going to be the only heir to the throne. And finding that out is going to completely rock his world. And then he's going to be in love with someone who doesn't want him. And I mean, we've all been there before. When you find someone that you want to be in love with and you want them to be with you, but they don't want to be with you. And then to find out he's not the heir to the throne. And then he's have to go on a quest to prove that he is the rightful heir. So that's where Ascension of the Blood Throne comes in. And if you notice on my cover, there is a female on the cover, not a male. So perhaps this other person that has a right to the throne is a female, and just so might happen to be one of the females that he met on the subway. So like I love to do a lot of twist.
I was trying to point to it, but I forgot I'm in mirror mode. So I'm like, wait.
I saw that.
Yeah, no, that, yeah.
The book dance. Yeah. So I got a question for you on this. And so since you also like to write in Christian fiction areas, did that inform some of the way you wrote the characters and some of the way you wrote the story?
No, I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid, but I've always been really big into science fiction as well as fantasy. So like it's really, really weird for other people to be like, aren't you in the church and you like vampires? I'm like, yeah. So like I'm a complete opposite of what you would expect a preacher's kid to be. Like if you open it up and then find out that I write about vampires and stuff, a lot of people are like, okay, that's weird. Like, you know, like, but then I also write Christian fiction. So like it never inspires. I didn't stay away from the validity of vampires or what they do. I didn't try to like, you know, sugarcoat them or anything. They're real vampires that have real issues that really live on human blood. There is no, you know, I'm going to save the world kind of vampire thing. It's, you know, they're all for their people, but they're not gonna like not be vampires, you know. So don't look for a Bible-toting vampire in my book.
All right.
Look for the vampire that's like Vampire in Brooklyn that will, if you're walking in the park by yourself, you better not be doing that. So yeah, that's
a walking snack pack.
Yeah, basically.
You know, it's a hot pocket. That's all it is. You know, just pick them up, take them with you.
What about you, Jennifer?
Well, when Jessica first approached me, I know we had to figure out, you know, what group of people we were going to write about, and I decided to pick shifters. But I didn't want to do the typical like wolf shifter thing, even though there's wolf shifters in the book. I ended up making them the bad guys. So I decided to do some research, see what I wanted to do, and ended up picking a black jaguar. And then I didn't want to base it in the US like some of the others had, so I actually picked China. So she's an Asian black jaguar. But that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
How'd you decide to
Are you
go?
pointing?
How'd you decide to go that path?
Honestly, it was just a look at some stuff, see what kind of shifters I wanted to do. Yeah, I like writing shifters, and I've wrote wolf shifters before, but I wanted to do something completely different from wolves. It was interesting making the wolves the bad guys because they had ruled the shifter population for so long, and the Cyrus was actually ruling with a very cruel hand. There's actually a moonstone necklace in the book that the elite inherits when they take over, and it can help control the shift of any shifter in their community. And he used to abuse it and torture people with it. And that's why she wanted to make some change. She wanted to be able to bring peace to the shifter community.
Okay. Peace in the shifter community? Doesn't that like blow entire storylines?
I like this Black Jack. He's kind of going off of the Black Panther, aren't you? Black Jaguar, Black Panther.
No connection.
No, kinda.
I picked Moonstone because, you know, shifters and the moon and everything. I thought it was appropriate.
Yeah.
So did you tie the two together? Is any of the shifter power tied to the moon, or?
Not really. They do gain more power when the full moon is around, but it doesn't rule them as far as them having to shift during the full moon. And the moonstone was actually created to help bring peace, even though Cyrus didn't use it that way. It was supposed to help like break up.
Oh,
I think she froze.
we froze.
Well, to make them shift back to their human and to resolve conflict. And he
Hey, Jennifer, we lost you for a minute. And we still lost you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
messaged her like, oh, you froze.
Well, you know what? I'll hop in because as she talks about the moonstone, I know with my character, she wakes up with a piece of jewelry herself, and it's an heirloom. It's her sign that she is the elite. And it's called the Knowledge Stone. It's this really cool, like sterling silver choker with like a blood red stone in it. And for the orcs themselves, it's just, a sign that they
Okay.
are. There you are, Jennifer.
My internet just blinked, like it went out.
Yep,
It
that
happens.
But oh yeah, so basically, it looks like for the orcs, it's just symbolic because they're all about power, they're all about symbols, they're like warmongers, so it's all about strength. But being being part human, and my main character being part human, and then her father just being of a different heart and of a different mindset, she discovers the real power of the stone itself. Because my focus is always connecting with who you are, and how that sort of unlocks just your own power. And just the stone itself, you have to read it to find out what the secret of it is, but it really helps her when it comes to facing that life and death battle, which, to become the elite, if anyone challenges you, it's a fight to the death. And for her, that's what she faces. So, yeah, I think that, that's a whole how I work that in with the orcs, since they're not magical, just having that tie to a bit of their past is what sort of sets her up for possible success. I won't tell you if she wins or loses, so we'll keep it on the down low.
Does she get a second book is the question.
I'm not sure about that. That's in the cards. We'll see. Actually, I'll have to take out a magic 8-ball, shake it, and we'll see.
What about the kitty? What about the kitty on her shoulder?
Oh yeah, he is actually pivotal to like just basically her being alive has a lot to do with him. And then actually he is somewhat of an agent for multiple parties for the sake of keeping the orcs like as orcs, because they've been self-destructive and they have gained attention from the high spirit, but not the good kind of attention, the kind of attention that could lead to them being wiped out. So her coming at the time that she's coming is basically, they don't see it as a second chance or a chance to survival. It's just we want our ways, we want them the way they're going to be. We don't want no woman ruling us because orcs are patriarchal. And so they see change as, something, we don't want any of that. But for her, change is the high spirit's way of saving them, but they don't get it. So you see how that unfolds.
So here's what I want to throw out there. And Michael, I'm going to start with you on this one. So when you start working in shared IP and shared universes, there's a lot of work that goes into coordinating, and you kind of get this team effort that goes, like Jennifer building the maps and things like this. So for you guys, how did it work for you? Was it a lot of fun working in the shared universe, trying to create some of the common stuff? What was the painful points? Because I mean, it's one of those things. It's a lot of fun to do, but obviously there's a lot more work when you're doing shared world building and things like this.
Well, honestly, working with the authors that I'm working with, it has been an absolute pleasure. Each one of these females that I worked with have been supportive, fun, funny. We all get along great. There hasn't been any egos. I mean, it's amazing to work with a group of authors that see the entire spectrum. Like, we all want each other to perform. We all want each other to succeed. There's no egos. Like, Jessica might have thought up this brainchild, but she's like, what do you guys think of this? And like, when we all get together and have our group calls and group meetings and everything, everybody has a voice. It's not one person over the other. Everybody is, I mean, we all get along. If you notice, we're all laughing and talking and joking around like it. That's the way it is. I'm honored to be a part of this with him.
What about you, Jennifer?
Basically what Mikel said, it was great working with everybody. It was really fun making the map because we had to figure out who was going to be on the dark side and who was going to be on the light side. And like my story, I know we're not allowed to enter other territories without their permission. Like a shifter can't go into the vampire territory without permission, kind of thing. So when making the map, I had to make sure that nobody overlapped basically the adventure that my character had to go on. Because she ends up going to like a little misfit town that's like right on the border of the bad and the good. So it was fun.
So, anybody else want to kind of dive into that and talk a little bit about that shared universe side of things, working together, the creative process?
I will say that though this is my brainchild, I had to control myself as far as writing, because the way I naturally write, I world build as I write. So this was a whole different story, a whole different process of having this world build there and being like, you can't go away from this world build. So I had to like smack myself on the hand a couple of times. Like, if you change this, it may really mess up 5 other books that you're not writing. So that I think was the most challenging part. But like Mikel said, I wanted it to be a collaborative thing. I didn't want to be like, this is my world and you guys are writing in it. Like, I wanted this to feel like this is our baby together. But then that also meant, like I said, slapping myself on the hand, like, don't you do that. That's not what y'all agreed on.
Yep. And I will say with the shared world, I think, like it's unanimous. We all get along, we could all approach each other and talk to each other and collaborate. And I feel like, just even tapping into other people's ideas, like let's say using the creatures from other people's stories, that actually enriched and enhanced my story, and I feel like even though they're not quote unquote the same story, they're all sort of tied together, just from like the different bits and pieces that we've been able to collaborate with, when it comes to the creatures, even the rules for the magic, and just, getting the heads up, hey, there's a firefight in the forest, stay away, just having that as well, and it's just fun, having like that though they're not tied, they sort of are with like different events, seeing a firefight in the sky. Oh, fireworks? Nope, that's the phoenixes, so just knowing, just having that little, tie in together. I think that's cool.
Yeah, and that world doc that we have, where we were like adding different creatures to it, and it just got like, okay, let me go see if I have something on the list that will fit this moment. I created tentacled creatures, and I'm like, guys, by the way, if you hear this sound in the woods, look out.
Run!
And Kish, I believe you created the moving
the dark
water.
Yeah, I have the darken, which is a body of water that it moves. It does not have a fixed location, and there's a creature inside that basically it just signifies danger, problems ahead, so it can pop up anywhere. So it, anyone can use that in their story, where it pops up. And you know what, like I wanted to say before, that since I'm book 6, I really tried to use like all of the creatures, because since I'm the last story that they're gonna read, I just wanted to do the throwback to like everything that they saw before. So
I had one of my characters like, my mom says that that lake is good luck, and then another character's like, your mom's crazy. Like, yeah, wow, you better run, girl.
Run.
So this is always the fun part. What's the one thing, and Jennifer, I'm going to start with you on this one. What's the one thing that you kind of learned that really surprised you out of the process of working on the book and working in this project? So if there's one thing that came out of it, whether it was something either you learned about writing, something you learned about the characters, or just something that the story itself, you're like, huh, didn't expect that to happen. What's the one thing that surprised you out of the process?
Well, I originally started out writing in the beginning in 2014, being a pantster, basically just flying by the seat of my pants. This one I actually outlined for the most part. I still had a little bit at the end that I needed to do, but I had plot points that I wanted to reach. There comes a point in time where my characters are in danger in the forest, and something that wasn't in my outline was squirrels. And my editor loves this scene because squirrels, basically, I'm not going to give anything away, but my character thinks these horde of squirrels are about to attack her. And it's hilarious to read. She was like, the squirrel scene, I want you to expand on more. So I actually had to write some more for that scene just for her.
Gotta embrace the attack squirrels.
I gotta
Yep.
read.
We had those on my college campus. So Jessica, what's the big thing that surprised you out of this?
The biggest surprise of all of this is that I was actually able to kind of give away some of the control. I'm really I hold all of my stories to the don't look at it till it's ready. I'm very protective, but I couldn't do that 100% because I need to reach out and make sure that everything is meshing with everyone else. And giving up, like I said, this is a collective thing. Like, what do you guys think about this thing happening? What do you think about this creature? You don't have to ask that of anyone when you're writing your own story. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this, but I was surprised. It was actually a lot of fun to get feedback on the characters, and then also to see what everyone else was coming up with, and how you feel inspired by someone else's way of thinking about something. We had another author. Unfortunately, she could not continue through the project, but she came up with some amazing little tidbits, and I was like, "Ooh, girl, let me take notes." You know what I mean? So I really thought this was gonna feel like that high school group project where some of us is doing all the work and then one person is off in the corner and they just come slap their name. It was not like that. It was like every single person present and focused. And I'm like, that surprised me because I was ready for us to have at least a couple people where if y'all don't get it together, but we didn't have that. And I'm like, I don't know if it was luck or what, but it was a great experience.
What about you, Em?
I know this is the first book I've outlined, from start to finish. But I noticed that, a lot of my outline has been chucked. I plotted out the characters and everything else. And then literally, I think it was chapter 3, another character snuck in there. And I'm like, whoa. And he's one of those kind of characters that you have your villains, but then you have somebody that the villains need to keep an eye on. So he just surfaced. So it was cool just the way everything sort of organically came together, because it's just neat when the characters take over the story. And I felt in this one, the characters sort of took over the story, and I'm just, I'm the stenographer. I'm just taking notes and putting it together. So I really enjoyed that part, of it.
What about you, Kish?
Surprise for me, man. I have to say it was my ability to stick within the rules, because Jessica did the world building, and there's a certain set of rules. And for me, when I write, I change things as I write all the time. Whenever I'm going through it, the story will start one way and it will be a completely different thing by the end. But I'm really surprised at myself that I was able to stick within the set boundaries. There was one particular thing I wanted to push back against, but it worked out really well for my story. So that was it for me.
What about you, Mikel?
Well, I really didn't have anything that was too hard for me. I'm used to writing within a certain story because I always outline all my stories. I think the biggest thing was the fact that usually indies don't get along, especially, they butt heads a lot. and they all wanted to be about them. But in this one, we were all lifting each other up, like excited. And like when Kish does good, we're like, oh, Kish, do this. And like Jennifer will like, Jennifer. And then, like Jessica was like, how's this doing? And we're like, oh, that's sick. So it's like a different experience when you have 6 amazing authors all joined together for a common goal, which is to get our books out there. So if Netflix or anybody wanted to, like hit us up or anything, we're all for that. Movies, I mean, we'll do, TV, just in case you guys are listening, we'll totally do TV. We'll take some Netflix deals.
Netflix, Amazon, Hulu.
We're
not picky.
Yeah, we're not picky at all, right?
We'll take whatever.
Yeah, Amazon Prime. Let's do Amazon Prime.
So now, there's one thing I got to ask here, because Jessica, you brought this up when you were kind of talking about the universe. That's one of those things that we talk about sometimes, and that's fashion. So when you hear and talk about how people dress, the jewelry they wear, all these sorts of things, really builds out a world. It builds out a universe when you're going down to those level of details and whatnot. So what do you guys do to play with the fashion? How does that really round out you guys' world?
Well, I think we treated this as if you're like visiting different tribes. So if you come to my world, you're going to see a whole different style of fashion than you will if you go into Kish or EM or Mika. Like they're all living in their own little bubbles, so to speak. So I created a whole different mineral that is mined from the mountains around the Phoenix territory. This is what they use to build their weapons. It's what they use to make a lot of their fashion, because it can withstand the fire or the heat of their flame, right? So that's tied into a lot of their wardrobe and just their building structures, right? But then that's not what you're going to see. So like when I went to the House of Trades, which is like the common grounds, you see most people are like cloaked and hiding their tribal wear, so to speak, because I don't want you to know where I'm from. You know what I mean? Like as the elite, especially a Phoenix elite, she's there. They're like, put your hood down, cover up. We do not need these people knowing who you are coming in here, So I think in the common spaces, when you're like coming into contact with a species or a race that's separate from yours, you try to kind of hide that, unless you're one of like the boats. So there's like the road boys in my book. They don't care who sees them because they're like the thugs of the woods and stuff. So it's like, I'm who I am. And their wardrobe really reminds me, I pulled a lot from like the 40s gangsters. Like they went to Earth and was like, I'm gonna dress like this forever, but now it's been 60 years since they visit, so they're way out of style. You know what I mean? So that's how I decided to build their wardrobe. But I think when you go into different territories, as you would like kind of traveling from the US to like Japan or something, we have some of the same technologies, but when you look around, it's like you're in a whole different world. And I think that work to make it feel more like an actual world instead of like one big place. You get to go to different territories and experience different cultures, if that makes sense.
So we're kind of coming up on time here. So here's what I want to do. This hour went really fast. So we want to go back around. Everybody remind us where we can find you. What's social media, websites, all that good stuff. And what else you've got coming in the works. So we'll kind of go in reverse this time. So Jennifer, we'll start with you.
You can find me on Facebook under Jennifer Laslie. You can look on my website. It is authorjlaslie.com. I'm actually writing the very last book to my Unfortunate Spell series. It's a total of 6 books. They're all have like punny titles too. Like the first one is Who Ordered a Medium, How to Spell Disaster, When to Scry Wolf, What the Heck's Happened, Why Didn't You Ward Me? And then the last one is Where Are My Soul Sisters? So it's like solstice-ers and soul sisters. So all play on words for the titles. They are paranormal romance, but they're kind of rom-com-ish. So there's some humor in all of them. So if you want to, I actually have Soul Sisters up on pre-order for 99 cents on Amazon. So you can go check that out and check out the rest of the series.
What about you, Mikel?
Well, you can find me on Facebook under Mikel Wilson or author Mikel Wilson. On Instagram, A Light Beyond the Darkness. On Twitter, author Mikel Wilson. I have Shattered But Not Easily Broken. I have Picking Up the Shattered Pieces on Amazon. Working on right now book 3 of that series that's called A Broken and Shattered Vessel. I'm also working on a mystery drama that's something for Susan that's coming out this year. So I've got like a lot of different projects that are coming out all at once. And book 2 to my hybrid series is coming out this year. It's called At Last, A Glimmer of Hope. It's about Greek mythology and vampires.
What about you, Delizhia?
Okay, well, you guys can find me on Facebook under author Delizhia, Instagram, Miss Jenkins Books. The next thing I'll be working on is a title called The Book of Obsidian. But if they're interested in my previous work, we have the Vampire Hunters Academy, which is a 6th book. I just released its 6th book, which is a prequel last year. They could also look for The Lost Queen as well. And for any other updates, I tend to put it on my website, or they can visit. I also created a Patreon for the Vampire Hunters Academy, so they can check that out too if they are interested in becoming a guardian or a huntress. And that's pretty much it.
What about you, Kish?
So I am basically Kish Knight everywhere on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok. Kish Knight, and my website, you can always find me there. It's www.kishknight.com. And what I've got coming up, actually, this year, I've got 3 books that should be coming out. I've got part 2, Fury Born of my new adult urban fantasy. I've got book 2 of my young adult dark urban fantasy, which is Curse. And I've also got a book that, oh my gosh, has been taking forever to come out, but it's Singed. It's urban fantasy as well, new adult. And I'm so excited for that. So that's it. Kish Knight everywhere.
What about you, EM?
Okay. So I'm author EM Lacey on everything, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And I just I guess you could say I just started the TikTok. So yeah, so I'm author EM Lacey on TikTok. And my website is www.emlacey.com. So that's where I am on the internet. And I am working on the 3rd book to a series I have started called Biggs and Meyer. It's a law firm that represents humans in paranormal situations. So the first book is Biggs, Meyer, and the Vampire. It follows their first case. And originally it was going to be a short story, but it bled into 4 books. So the second book is Spirit Box. And the 3rd book that I'm working on now is called A Gathering of Witches. So this is going to explore a little bit more of how the firm deals with their vampires plan B. Because basically they got rid of the vampire in book 1, they thought, but the vampire has a plan B, and now they have to deal with his plan B before they go to court. So it's fun playing with that one. So that's one of several books I plan on releasing this year. I have a YA trilogy that I'm building, and if all goes well, I should have about 3 books outside of this one for this year. So that is moi.
Nice.
And Jessica.
All right. Well, again, I'm Jessica Cage. You can find me at www.jessicacage.com. I am J Cage author on all platforms. And yes, I'm on TikTok. I have forced the Rise of the Elites authors to join me there. Yes. Outside of this this project, I do have my Fairy Tales of the FYP, which is actually inspired by my People Watching Adventures on TikTok that is coming out in May of this year. I'm also working on the 6th or 7th book release of my Gen Rebellion series, as well as launching 2 new series in the coming year. I will also be putting out the fillers because I will be launching a new shared word collection and inviting new authors to join us in writing those stories. So again, jessicacage.com, and I will be putting out information there for the new world.
And I've had the fun of being your host. I'm Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, and of course here at ConTinual. Thanks everybody for coming and hanging out, and we'll see you again next time. And I'm expecting you're going to see a lot of these folks again on a lot more panels. Thanks everybody for coming and hanging out.
Thank you.
Thank you.